What's doing? I'm Alec Lace. I'm returning to First Class Fatherhood today is former Navy SEAL, former U.S. Marine Craig Sawyer. It's a big honor for me to have Craig back on the podcast here. Him and his team at Vets for Child Rescue are hunting down the child sex traffickers. It is a huge problem in our country and around the world. They have a brand new documentary out titled Contra Land. The link to the documentary is down in the description there. You can hit the link or tap the card above here. It'll bring you right to the documentary. It's very important stuff. If you have children, I highly recommend you check it out. Craig has some important information you're about to hear right now, so let's jump into it. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And here is Craig Sawyer on First Class Fatherhood. Joining me now, a First Class father, Craig Sawyer. Welcome back to First Class Fatherhood.
Thank you, Alec. It's a pleasure to be back with you.
All right, let's get an update on the kids here. I believe the last time you were here, they were 19 and 15. How old are they now, and how are they doing?
21 and 17. They're doing really well. They're really well. Caden's home from school because there is no school to go to, so he's working online. And Aspen's got a new place with a couple of her friends, and she's stepping out on her own. And she comes back to do the laundry with them occasionally and have dinner. And it's cool. So it's just life is progressing. And Aspen doesn't want to really deal with all the media and the follow-ups with the documentary and the org. She's done her part. She's made her contribution, and she's proud of it. And she just wants to leave it in the rearview mirror. But she's in a pretty good place, so we're grateful for that.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear. And I was really just blown away by what she was able to accomplish. We're going to hit on the Contra Land in just a second here, but just refresh my listeners with a little bit about your background and what you do.
Yeah, well, I was in the Marine Corps and Navy SEAL teams and federal law enforcement, and I started doing some high-threat dignitary protection for the Department of State and another agency we don't talk about over in the war zones. And I learned about child trafficking, how pervasive it was, and I realized that the secrecy surrounding it was really the biggest threat. It's what allowed it to be so harmful to so many and kind of prevent a larger corrective mechanism against it. So I decided to rip the lid off of it, to expose it, take away that secrecy that the child traffickers enjoy and thrive under. And I believe that sunlight is the best antiseptic for corruption. So I decided to film Contraland, which is a documentary to expose child trafficking to the American people and show them the nature of it and show them that it's not just in another country or somewhere else. It's right here, right now. They're hunting our children, and we do need to take steps to safeguard them from it because it's so damaging. And so we launched it on Friday, the 8th, at no charge to the public. We put it up on contralandmovie.com, and we're encouraging everybody to go watch it. And if you're compelled by it, share it with the biggest public figures, the biggest politicians, the biggest mouths, to spread the word, because I really believe it's going to take a viral reach to generate the type of cultural turnaround needed. Because, abusing children in this way started with one man back in the 40s and 50s, falsifying scientific studies, and he really was active at politicking to soften our legal system, our psychological healthcare system, and our educational system to accepting an adult's sex with a child as somehow normal and good. Well, we've investigated and we see how utterly destructive it is. So I think it's time for us to culturally do an about face on that subject and circle around the children and protect them. And that's the whole spirit of what Contraland's about.
Yeah, very well said, Craig. And I'm so happy that you have kind of blown the lid off of this thing. And congratulations on getting the documentary out there. I know you've been working very hard on it. I'm going to put a link in the description of this podcast episode so my listeners can tap in. I'll do my best to share it with the audience. Well, what has the response been so far and the feedback been from the documentary?
The response has been overwhelmingly positive. Some people are saying they have a bit of a hard time watching it because it's a painful topic. Other people saying they just celebrate it wildly because it's so long overdue. It needs to be exposed, and that's the best medicine. And there was only one or two people saying, "Oh, I wish you would have hit it even harder. You didn't even go after the Vatican, or you didn't even get this organization." I'm like, my gosh, we're a small nonprofit organization. This is our first documentary out of the box. We did this all with small donations by supporters, and I think we knocked it out of the park. So those people obviously aren't tracking the situation and understand. They just want to see. They want to see massive correction, as do I. So I understand their sentiment, but that was only literally 2 people out of 50,000 people that have seen it now. And it's inspiring and it's encouraging to see the heartfelt responses and how they're saying it impacted them and how important it is. So I'm grateful to see that.
And I think the majority of people have this notion that it's a much smaller issue than what it really is. I mean, this thing is at a grand scale. I know we've seen that the Jeffrey Epstein has kind of turned into like a funny meme on social media. Oh, Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. And it's like, this is a guy that was bringing people to an island to have sex with little kids. And I don't think that it gets enough attention in the media whatsoever. How much higher does this actually go? I mean, that's one guy that we know of that was a multimillionaire. How much higher does this thing go, Craig?
Well, Epstein was really as rancid and I think evil as he was. You don't do that to children if you're of sound mind and decent moral character. So he was an absolute evil entity, but he was only, at that, he was only a host or a caterer, if you will, to the elite. So some of the world's most powerful and influential people were flying to his island and to his mansions in New Mexico and other locations where he was hosting big parties and providing underage children for them to abuse. So it goes all the way to the top, Alex. There is no level at which I've observed to be above this, because it seems to be that humans don't handle absolute power for too long very gracefully. And when people become multi-billionaires, or they've grown up in families that are multi-billionaires, and they can have literally garages full of all the race cars they want, and they've traveled all over the world, and they can buy influence and do anything they want. After a while, they apparently start to get bored and they start getting weird. And I think you can study any of these some of these cases and see where people kind of get deranged and they go off on some of these goat trails. So it does seem to be that some of the most influential and elite and wealthy people seem to be very heavily into this whole abuse with the children in different ways. So it's disappointing to learn about mankind, but that's the reality that we're learning.
Yeah, it's scary too, Craig, because the guys with that kind of money and power can control the narratives that we see out in the media and suppress all the information that is coming out about it. And you know what? We hear the word a lot today, especially on certain social channels, about toxic masculinity. And to me, there's no more toxic of a man or a human being that is preying on young kids and selling them for sex and getting involved in that. And I wish that they would pay more attention to it. But I guess if it's at that level, they have the power to kind of suppress these things. And one of the most disturbing things that I saw in the documentary was you had a guy that showed up with a birthday cake for a 12 turning 13-year-old girl to have sex with her after just dropping off his kids. I mean, how disturbing, how surprised are you by that type of scenario?
Well, we'd had several. One left his children up at a ski resort in Utah, his wife and children, and he drove a minivan down to our location with baby seats in the back to have sex with a 13-year-old girl. So that wasn't as disturbing as the one guy with the birthday cake and the stockings turning out to be a federal agent. So he was an active duty Fed. So we thought, man, you're supposed to be one of the good guys. And but we're like, book him. We're not playing favorites here. The law has to be equal and fair. Lady Justice has to be blind for it to be legitimate. And so it was only like a brief pause where we just kind of like, well, all right, continue on. It is what it is. So, yeah, you really can't call it, Alec, on who these people are going to be. I think evil can find itself in the heart of any man or woman, and we've seen all kinds. So they come in, some of them illegal aliens, some of them elite pedophiles with money and influence and political power to get out of just about any charges, or get off very early on probation. And it's just disturbing, but it's something that we have to, kind of crank down the strictness of our laws. We have to enforce them more strongly in defense of the children. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, and Craig, I mean, you work with a lot of the local law enforcement agencies now. How many have like task forces or units dedicated to this issue? I feel like kind of like every major city should have a task force specifically just dedicated to doing what you do, basically creating profiles online and trying to find these guys. Is it common for police departments to have a force dedicated to this issue?
It's becoming more common. Thank God, it's increasing. So what we're seeing is other law enforcement agencies that didn't have this going on when we first started Vets for Child Rescue 3 years ago. Some of them now do, and they've got support all the way from the White House now. So this president has made it clear where he stands on the abuse and rape and sale of children. He's been very vocal about it, and he's backed it up with his policies. So that's a good thing for kids, and we're seeing that manifested out in the different agencies. So, but the problem is so big and so pervasive. Look, how much activity does it take to generate 38 to 50 billion dollars a year just selling the children alone inside the United States? Now, you imagine the level of activity. That's a lot of harm to kids. It's all bad for the kids. So it's huge. So there's going to have to be an increasing and ongoing national response. It's really going to have to be a cultural change in the end to turn this back around.
Yeah, I would call it a pandemic, Craig. I mean, I would think that's something worth shutting the economy down for, is to shut it down and rid the country of these pedophiles and these people that are involved in it. To me, that seems like a worthy cause. Here's the other issue is obviously to have a lucrative business that big means there's a lot of clientele. What do we do? I mean, is there any chance that these guys could be rejuvenated? Or, I mean, I don't think you can really change somebody's chemistry makeup when they're attracted to little kids. What do you do with these guys once you catch them? How do you reform them, or what do we as society do with them?
What we've learned is that this type of lack of regard for other human beings, this lack of empathy, is not something that can be easily rehabilitated, if at all. If you watch Contraland, you'll see Bob Hamer from the FBI, who'd gone undercover inside of NAMBLA, North American Man-Boy Love Association, pedophile group that hunt children. He would interview these guys and talk to them, and they would confide in him because they thought he was one of them. And they would say, yeah, we'll never change, but we'll tell the court-appointed counselors whatever they need to hear. So we have to realize, and my heart's good. I would love to see bad people rejuvenated. I think God has he has grace, a mercy, and a forgiveness that doesn't really make sense on our level. It's bigger. It's beyond what we can comprehend. So I'm not trying to limit God's grace and forgiveness, but I'm saying in our society, can we let predators stay on the loose who tend to just repeatedly harm until they're caught and locked in a box to put a stop to it? I don't think we can afford to leave them out there. And I think the corrupt judges that turn them loose are complicit and should be investigated. And that's a big problem that we're seeing, Alec, is that I used to call them soft judges, and people inside the system are saying, Craig, you're wrong about that. Your heart's too good. You're giving them too much credit. They're not soft. They're corrupt. They're letting the predators loose because they're being paid to do it. And so anyway, however it's working, I don't know each judge and I don't know each case, but I know we have to take the predators off the streets and keep them from raping more, because the average number of children that they rape is 70. Some of them rape hundreds of children because they like to work themselves into positions of access, unsupervised access to children. So they want to be scout leaders. They want to be Sunday school teachers. They want to be sports coaches and things like that, where they can have private access to the children and abuse them, and they abuse those positions, and they destroy our society by shattering the public faith in those once trusted positions. So they do a lot of harm on multiple levels. And for the rest of us to live in a free and safe and happy environment, we have to lock the predators away and put a stop to their harm. It's no good. It's not merciful to let them back out to continue to rape and harm and wreck society for all of the innocent.
Yeah, well said, Craig. And as far as the majority of the victims that you're seeing from this that are being snatched up, are you saying, one thing I talk about on my show a lot is that we have a fatherless crisis here in the United States. We got way too many kids are growing up without a father in the home. Are you seeing any correlation with the number of kids that are getting sold into slavery? Do they come from broken homes or households without a father?
We're seeing an absolute correlation, and let me share something that should resonate, so that I don't try to come across as holier than anybody else. I was running high threat mobile security for an agency over in the war zone that we don't talk about, but they're, American people involved in our defense. Well, I was having to deploy for months at a time, and so when I was coming home, I saw that our son was and our little boy was so bright and beaming. He had this just beautiful personality. He was just a happy soul. And the children and the teachers would come out and run out to greet him and yell his name, Caden, whenever I'd let him out of the truck in the morning. It was really, really inspiring. Just a beautiful kid. He started being withdrawn and kind of dark. And we were like, whoa, what's going on with our boy? This is a change. And so he wouldn't tell us, and so we started really asserting ourselves into the school, going on the field trips, going and sitting in the classrooms and talking to other teachers. What do you see and what's going on? And one of the teachers confided in my wife, you need to watch his teacher. There's something going on there. He targets one kid each year, and he torments them, and he's an emotional, psychological predator. Well, the teacher ended up being a homosexual, and I don't know that's why he was targeting our child, but my wife and I went and faced the principal, and we sat him down and we said, you will get this guy out of our school, and our child is never going to be in the same room with that man ever again, so you're going to fix it. Well, the principal was having a relationship with that teacher, and the principal wasn't inclined to do anything about this tenured teacher that was so protected. And I said, well, you know what? Our child is more protected. Try us, because you'll be on the news by tomorrow night, and we'll have pickets out here, and I'll put on a canary suit and dance around in your parking lot if I have to get attention here, because this is not okay. How many other children has he harmed? And why is he here? And why haven't you done anything about it yet? So now it's going to be your job, Mr. Principal. You're going to be held to account, because you are the one responsible for your teachers. And then only then did he make the change. In fact, the next season, he goes, well, you will take your child out of the teacher's class and we'll let him finish out. And then next year he won't come back. And I'm like, that's pretty weak response. Next year he was on the roster again. And that's when we went back and said, dude, wrong answer. Stand by. Pain's coming. He's like, oh, no. We'll do it. We'll do it. So they removed him, and he was relieved. But it took that. So they'll not only target a child without a father, Alec, but they'll target one whose father isn't present right there. And for me, I was in a war zone because that's where I could make the amount of money that we needed to take care of my family. That's where I was valuable and I could make that contribution. But at the same time, my kids were growing up without me. And so I was kind of getting it all wrong. My heart was in the right place. But so I'm like, okay, I got to transition home and find something else to do here. But that's, I want that little anecdote to resonate with people to go, hey, look, man, they can even target a Navy SEAL and federal agent's kid if he's not right there making his presence known. So I just say that to say this: let's assert ourselves on behalf of our children and make our presence known, and defend them and stand by them, and let all the predators that may be observing know that this child is well protected.
Yeah, nothing would give me greater pleasure than to think these guys are shitting themselves knowing that somebody like you is out there coming for them. And just in the story that you said there, you had one of the teachers say, oh, that guy, we know him as a guy that targets one student every year. This was already known. It almost reminds me like the Jerry Sandusky situation in Penn State, where this had been going on for years. And people had to know about it, but kind of just turned a blind eye to it. And it was, it's that now. Let me ask you this, Craig. We as a society, has this been going on for like 100 years, or is it recent since this technology age where we have just the overwhelming amount of access to pornography? Like, are we making it more conducive? Are we as a society creating more of these predators that are out there?
Bad character has existed from the dawn of mankind, no doubt. we see examples of abuse going back as long as written history will indicate. But I do believe there's been an acceleration of it due to the access, like you're talking about with the electronic apps and the access. Whereas before, a lot of these predators, visually oriented, a lot of them used to share Polaroids of children that they would abuse and shoeboxes, and they would go to each other's houses and or mail the stuff back and forth and trade them like trading cards between the sickos. And now it's just easier for them, and it's accelerated. They can get video and they can get images with a click of the mouse. And I believe in freedom of speech, but I believe more strongly in defense of the innocent. So I think we've got to absolutely shut down any child pornography activity on any internet access whatsoever, because that does seem to be accelerating and exacerbating the problem. And watching too much porn for guys is a problem, because like any addiction, once you get too much of something, it takes more. And then what's the next thing that's going to give the guy the visual or the mental charge he needs? It's going to have to be something a little bit unusual. And the next thing you know, it's something weird. The next thing you know, it's something abusive and repulsive and despicable. And they get off. But I think that starts with bad character. You don't get into things that are harmful like that if you have respect for others and have respect for human life, and you have empathy. Never should it be okay for a normal guy to watch so much porn that he decides that a woman needs to be raped because she's got on a miniskirt. We instinctively know that that's wrong. And so I think a normal guy wouldn't go down that goat trail. I think the people that do are kind of broken morally, and their integrity is broken from the beginning. And I think the access only gives them an avenue to accelerate their problems. That's been my learning on it so far.
Yeah, it's one of the things I worry about the most, Craig, is I have 3 boys and then my little girl, but it's like my oldest is 14 now, and it's like they all use these devices, and it's like right now it's not even going to a porn site. You could just Google naked woman, and you're going to get thousands of images, videos, and all this stuff pops up. It's so hard to and it's very easy for these people to manipulate them, just like you talk about in the documentary, the grooming process that they go through. I mean, if they catch them in these video game chat rooms, it seems like a way we don't even know what's going on, because we assume they're just sitting there playing Minecraft, but really they're talking to this guy somewhere in the country that's starting this grooming process. Are you seeing a lot of it coming through that way, through video games and through the technology that they're getting to these kids?
Great question, and it's an important point to touch upon. Yes, the predators will stalk the children through their Xbox games, through all sorts of apps that children chat back and forth on. And the predator will pose as another child. So let's say it's one of your sons. The predator would probably stalk your son by sending him a photograph of a similarly aged, pretty young girl, and say, "Hey, I'm new to your school. I'm kind of scared. You seem nice. I saw you in the hallway today," and start up a conversation with him. And if he's a nice kid and she's pretty, he's going to be pretty happy about that and chat with her. And then what the predator will do is start showing some naked pictures or revealing pictures, saying, "Hey, and started exposing the girl, and the boy thinks that she's liking him and she's doing that for him. And then next thing the boy knows, the girl's asking for a little picture of something in return. So maybe he does it. Well, then the predator's asking for more. And if the boy gets uncomfortable, and if he ever stops, the predator goes, "Wait a minute, I'm going to send these pictures to your parents unless you give me video now, or you give me more pictures. Jeez. Or I'm going to send it to your whole school. I've got all their teachers and everyone. I'm going to send these pictures to your school or to your church or to your or I'm going to put them on live on the internet for everybody to see, millions of, billions of people." And so the child gets scared. Maybe the child gives more. And maybe the child still doesn't know that it's a 50-year-old hairy fat man, or whatever pervert after him. But there can be a luring of the boy to, hey, meet me after school at the edge of the school campus or the playground or whatever, and the kid could get, maced, sprayed with pepper spray, hit in the head, thrown in the back of a creepy rape van, and never seen or heard from again. I mean, there's just horrible scenarios like that we're hearing about constantly. So that's one thing that they do. They definitely stalk the children through all their smart app devices, and we as parents have to assert ourselves and get in there and find out who our children are dealing with and what these apps are doing. Some of these apps, Alec, not only have audio and video and recording capability, but they've got geolocating on it. And the child might not even know that the predator can tell not only what state, but what city and what neighborhood and what home the child is in, but even what bedroom, which corner of the house that thing is pinging from. The poor child has no idea. And the predator may just be sitting in the car out front, and the kid goes out to take out the garbage. Maybe he gets snatched, and you never see or hear from him again, or her. So, yes, they stalk our children through the apps, and we have to assert ourselves. And that's the new killing fields. That's how they're gaining access and stalking our children.
Yeah, very scary stuff, Craig. And one thing that I see personally, I drive Uber on the weekends, and well, not now during the pandemic, but normally I drive on Friday and Saturday nights for the bar scene. And it's one of the, now they're not underage, but
There's an education for you.
it is a nightmare to see these young girls that come out of the bar intoxicated by themselves that just get in my car. They don't question me. They don't. And I'm thinking like, man, if there's a predator out here, you get an Uber sticker online anywhere you want, and you could pose as. Did you see any with the? I mean, it's not really child trafficking because they're older, but they're still like college age kids. Are you seeing anything through Uber and Lyft and all of this ride sharing? Has there become an issue with trafficking through any of that? Have you seen?
We've heard stories about it, quite a few, but you touched on something that's very important. It's just the naivety of young people, and I mean, our daughter scared us to death with some of the stuff that she did, and we only learned about it after the fact. She just packed up her car and went somewhere, and apparently had a great time. Oh, I went to L.A. this past week, and we're like, sweetie, there, what do you? This was when she was just old enough to drive, so very adventurous and very private. But we're like, you're not welcome to just do that. I mean, there's certain things that we can help look over you with, and it's just they don't know what they don't know. It's like little bunny foo-foo hopping around in the forest, and they don't know that there's a big bad wolf, or they've heard about it, but it doesn't seem real until the big bad wolf grabs them and bites them. And it's just heartbreaking to see how easy prey some of the children are. And I think that's why we have to be so much more vigilant and diligent to look after them. And we don't want to steal their happiness or steal their childhood joy and innocence by telling them too much, but we do need them to know that predators are out there and that they do have to be alert. There's at some point there's a perfect balance between alertness and complete oblivion. I guess complete oblivion would be the most happy place for a child, but also the most dangerous place. And if a child was completely tuned up, man, if I had my way and if I wasn't thinking about the child's happiness, I mean, I could have my child be like a ninja kid, like Spy Kid. They'd be able to do all kinds of stuff and nobody would get them. But would they be very happy? No, that's not a good, innocent, playful childhood for a kid, right? Hardcore, assassin training kind of stuff. So somewhere there's a perfect balance. There's a perfect solution on how aware they need to be. And I think as long as we're looking for that, we'll do pretty good.
Yeah, and exposure, like as you said earlier, I think is really the key. And we've seen the one movie, Taken, with Liam Neeson, that kind of got into the world of that. And you remind me of like the real life type of guy in a Taken, and
minus
like
the
I said,
accent.
yeah, and like I said, I watched the documentary with my wife. She was a victim to this as a child and sexually abused, and she made sure to tell me to let you know that you're her hero and you're mine as well, Craig. And I really love the fact that you're on the forefront of doing this. And I could talk to you all day about it. I think it's such an important issue. What's next for you here now? The documentary is out. What is the next step for you? What are the goals for the future of it?
Well, what I'm hoping happens from the documentary is that it gets shared far and wide, because viral reach is literally needed in order to have the cultural effect that's required to address this problem. So with that reach, I hope comes access from greater political backing and support. I mean, we've done a fantastic amount of good with the private donations that we've gotten through our nonprofit org. But I think, man, with the FBI and CIA and counter-terrorist assets that I've got on my board and on my team and on my friends and contacts list, we could really, really kick the pants out of child trafficking in the United States with a significant operational budget. And we wouldn't have to be so public with it. You know, one thing about running a nonprofit org is we're accountable to the people and the donors. So, man, I make everything wide open and available to everybody that's donated to help this happen, because we're all sharing this together. It's a kind of a crowdfund project, right? But if you really want to go after the larger, more powerful rings of child trafficking and the elite, you need to have operational security, and that you need to have a pretty significant budget. And NGOs can do what law enforcement can't in a lot of ways, and law enforcement can do what we NGOs can't. So together we can make an unbeatable combination. And I think that partnership and that relationship needs to be exploited and built upon and capitalized upon for the children, because with it we can do a lot more than we can separately. So that's something that I think the president needs to know about, and I think there's a lot of horsepower that can be brought to the fight against child trafficking with that combination. So I hope that comes. There's probably going to be a Contraland 2 where we go in a little bit deeper and show some other aspects of it, because it's a wide scope of problem. It's not a very simple problem. There's a lot of ways that they're harming children, and quite frankly a very huge story. So, and there's also a possibility of us having a documentary series, a real life series of us running our operations, bringing in experts, learning from the witnesses and victims and the perpetrators themselves on how it all works and how we can all as a society help defeat it for the children. So there's a lot on the table. There's a lot of open invitations from law enforcement to go run joint ops that if we start getting better funding, we can just start running more of these operations and taking more predators off the streets.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about there. I'd love to see a Netflix or a Hulu special of you running this once a week. I mean, it would be great. And as you talk about the president and getting involved with the budget, right now it seems like they're just pulling money out of thin air and giving. People are asking for, because of the coronavirus, they're throwing in things like money for the Kennedy Center and stuff. Why not throw in something to defend our children here? I think I don't see a problem with that, and I would have no problem with that being included in the package. But maybe a topic for another time. And now the majority of my listeners, they're all parents. Everybody listening out there, you have kids, do your part in sharing this Contra Land. I really urge you to check it out and be knowledgeable of what's going on out there. And the last thing I'll ask you here, Craig, is what type of advice could you give to the parents out there to take those steps to keep their kids safe?
Yeah, man. Number one, know who's in your child's life. Who is your child hanging out with, and what culture is surrounding your child when you're not looking. Number two, I would say take their smart devices and put them in your master bedroom for charge overnight. That's when a lot of the children get into trouble. So get into their phones, find out who they're dealing with, and make sure they're safe. And number three, go to vetsforchildrescue.org, and there's a lot of tools there on some of the apps that have been harmful for children that predators stalk them through, and other empowering information, and a template for a form letter to fill in the blanks and send to your elected officials for stronger enforcement to protect the children. So we appreciate everybody doing that.
Yeah, very well said. This is an extreme honor for me to have you back on the podcast here, Craig. I love what you're doing. I really respect the entire process of the Vets for Child Rescue. The links will be in the description of today's podcast episode. And thank you for coming back. Give me a few minutes more of your time here on First Class Fatherhood.
Thank you, Alex. It's a pleasure, and I really enjoyed it. So thank you for amplifying the voice and the mission. Bless you for it.